I got off the plane at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. It was my first time traveling to another country alone. Not because I was trying to be a rebel and overcome my fear and find independence, although the latter half sounded quite nice. I lived with my mom, dad, and sister in Manhattan, New York for most of my life, and it was a sweet life. My sister and I were quite spoiled as my dad and mom both worked in corporate jobs with some very influential people in the tech world. Money was never an issue. But one horrific event in 2009 left my family broken forever. My mom and sister were out of our lives. It was just myself and my dad. I think more than anything, he just wanted to protect me. That's why he preferred that I go to a school in New York City where we would always be close. I've always loved fashion, and although New York would be a great place for me to pursue my studies, I just wanted a different experience. Studying abroad alone would require me to break away from my shell. Plus, it was hard work. Dad's money wouldn't buy me the good grades, and I guess that is a challenge I was looking for. I wanted it to mean something. Simply put, I felt like it was time for me to grow up and face the real world. Paris seemed like the perfect place for that. The beauty, the people, the fashion, and the food is far more exquisite than anything back in New York. I took the escalator down to baggage claim. I had about 2 suitcases and 2 carry-ons. I wasn't traveling exactly light, as I was going to be in the city for an entire school year. Plus, I wanted to still buy things I could take back home with me. I could see a chauffeur holding a sign that said Chamberlain. I walked over and let the driver know I was Rosie Chamberlain. He asked to see my ID just in case, as there were a lot of people pretending to be who they say they are, and he's gotten in trouble a few times from work. I agreed, and after confirming, we walked to a stretch limo and were off. It was raining pretty hard, so I couldn't get a look at the scene while we were driving. I texted my dad that the plane had landed safe, and I was in the limo he organized for me on my way to the rental property. Once we got to the building, the chauffeur, Claude, helped move my bags up the stairs to an elevator and outside of my unit. I was on the 12th floor. I thanked him, and he went on his way. I used the keys to open the front door. I dragged my luggage inside and left it. I walked to the living room and spread open the curtains that revealed big windows. I could see the city, including the Eiffel Tower in the distance. I turned around and looked up. I could see the second level of the apartment, which had the bedroom. I took the winding stairs that was a few feet from the door up. Even the view of the apartment looked gorgeous, and if I ever slept with the curtains open, I'd be greeted by the beautiful sun every morning. Who needed an alarm clock anyway? Across from my bed, there was a walk-in closet and a small narrow hallway that led to the bathroom. The bathroom had a window. I moved the blinds and I could see that it faced the other side of the street. I looked down to the other building and I could see someone leave a shop that looked like they sold coffee. I'm sure there were thousands of cafes around, but I was tired and craving a hot drink, so I took the stairs down to the living room, grabbed my purse, and headed out the door. I crossed the street and looked up at the sign. The name read Café Revissant. The patio was busy with customers. I knew I wasn't staying long, so I went inside and stood in line. There were pastries and baguettes displayed beautifully at the front counter. Jazzy French music played in the background. There were colorful paintings on the brick walls with faux cherry blossom branches woven in the ceiling and walls. I ordered a café con leche with a croissant because when in Paris, you have to try the flaky, buttery goodness. I paid for my things, and as I was heading out, I heard a man's voice call out to me, "Excuse me." I turned around. It was a tall guy, slim build, about 6 foot. He had black coiffed hair and green eyes. He was wearing a half-sleeve dress shirt with black dress pants and black loafers that had gold buckle accents and no socks. He had a deep voice. "Hi, sorry to scare you. My name is Finley." He had an English accent. "Are you enrolled at all in a fashion program?" Was this guy stalking me? I thought. But I answered with an uneasy, "Yes." He said, "Me too. I'm going to the Paris American Academy." I told him that I was enrolled there too. We stood at the corner of the street chatting for a bit. "I actually saw you at the airport earlier," he said. "I had a feeling you might be a student." "What gave it away?" I said. "My long top with leggings and heels accessorized with a headband? Or my hopeful smiling face that movies portray when an actress is excited about a new journey she's going on? Have you seen Legally Blonde?" I said. Finley laughed. Seen it. My boyfriend and I love it. Elle Woods had the best fashion sense. Of course, she could relax a little with those shades of pink. I asked Finley where he lived, and he said about 3 blocks away in an apartment. I looked at my watch, and I couldn't believe we had spoken for over an hour. It was starting to get a bit chilly, and sunset didn't look like it would be too far away. I excused myself and told Finley I would catch him in class in a few days. I sipped my coffee while I walked away. When I got to my building, there was a group of people waiting to take the elevator, so I decided to take the stairs up. Not the cleverest of ideas, especially in heels, but I powered through. I used the key to open the door and walked into the apartment. I spent the evening listening to some slow ballads on my iPod that I'd plugged into a dock. I unpacked my clothes into drawers and hung my more sophisticated ones in the closet. There was a shelving unit by the fireplace downstairs that I used to put some decor and fashion books. I picked up a picture of my family from my suitcase and held it for a moment. The photo was taken 5 years ago in 2006. We were in a beautiful wheat field in burgundy dresses and boots, and my dad in the same shade sweater with black Timberlands. It was a photo we used that year to send to families for Christmas. It was also a yearly tradition, but that came to an end a few months before our scheduled photo shoot when my mom was at a holiday work party. She had called for a taxi. She was smoking outside the venue and using her other hand to text my dad that she would be home in 12 minutes. 4 minutes had passed, and the taxi was about due for arrival. A masked man ambushed her with a gun and asked her to follow him to the alleyway at the back of the building, where he not only stole her purse that had a ton of cash, her IDs and credit cards and cell phone, but that wasn't enough. He thought he would also relieve his pent-up aggression, so he raped her. The cab had left after being idle waiting for my mom. My mom slowly stumbled from behind the alleyway, her hair disheveled and pantyhose ripped. She went back into the venue where the party was being hosted. She walked up to the concierge, but before she could say anything, she fainted. The days that followed were the worst. I thought we would be able to move past it, but truth be told, that was just the beginning. Eventually, our family would crumble, and it did. In 2009, my mom got 25 years to life for the murder of my sister, and she claims it was an accident. It happened when she was cutting vegetables for dinner and my sister jump-scared her, in which her instant reaction was to stab her with a knife, and that pierced her heart, killing her instantly. Even during the trial, my mom tried to convince me that she was innocent and how much she loved my sister and I. Though I believed it, I still had a margin of doubt. She wasn't the same after the attack. She was always frightened. She was lost in gaze. She had at least 3 sessions a week with a psychiatrist, even had medications that she had to take multiple times a week, and then her and Dad eventually stopped sharing the bed. We'd just sleep on the couch. It wasn't long until she left her job and stayed at home, and all it took was a stranger to overpower my mom in a weak and vulnerable state. He took her confidence, pride, and light away in just one moment. Perhaps my mom's mind was messed up, and she could have reacted to my sister in fear as mimicking the night she was hurt, that someone had broken into her house. But then again, maybe it was the meds that led her to go crazy. I don't know. I took the portrait and placed it on the shelf. I then gulped down the rest of my coffee and ate the croissant. I went and took a hot shower and decided to call it a night. The next few days I got supplies ready for school, as well as did some minimal grocery shopping because buying pre-prepared food every day would definitely add up. I had to learn to make some simple recipes. On Monday morning, I took a taxi to school. It was about a 5-minute drive, but there was a lot of left turns. I felt so nauseous. Once I got to school, I used the map that was sent to me in the mail to get to my first class. I walked into the room, which was small and had about 14 students. I saw Finley waving his hand and went and sat beside him. The rest of the day, I was in and out of classes meeting teachers. I was taking notes and just getting acquainted to the school. Everyone there, you could tell, was very serious about all things fashion, including their style. Like every day seemed like a runway show. Finley and I would hang out most days after classes, sometimes even grab a bite to eat at a local bar and have some beers. First term went by quick and ended pretty well. I had designed 5 outfits, and for my final one in one of the courses, I created a replica version of Katniss Everdeen's wedding dress from the Hunger Games movie. My teacher really loved it and asked me if she could use it as an example for her students next term. She would return it to me after that. Honestly, I was so proud of myself that someone noticed my work and thought the craftsmanship was good enough to show others. My dad flew down to Paris to visit me during the Christmas holidays. I could tell he missed me so much because when he gave me a hug, he seemed to not pull away for a good 10 minutes. Even though he was only here for a short while, we still managed to check out special landmarks and watch some Christmas movies together. The old school ones like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It really brought back so many childhood memories. On my dad's last night, I was upstairs sleeping when I was woken up by weeping. I got out of bed and walked to the railing and looked down to the living room. I could see my dad by the fireplace. One of his hands was on the shelf. Although I couldn't see what he was looking at, I knew. It was our family photo. I began crying too. I guess he heard me sniffling and looked up. He told me he didn't mean to wake me up, but before he could finish, I ran down the stairs and into his arms. We both cried so much. It was the first time since we lost 50% of our family that we mourned this way. During my sister's funeral and my mom's sentencing and trial, my dad and I kind of held in our composure. Tonight was us owning our emotions and letting it all go. The next day after breakfast, my dad left for the airport. He told me to keep in touch and that so far Paris was having a very positive impact on me, being an adult and acting very ladylike. And my grades were wonderful too. He encouraged me to keep striving for success and enjoy every moment of the time away, because once I returned home, he would never let me go anywhere for a long, long time. I knew he was kidding, but I probably would stay in New York for a long time before going on any other adventures. It was the first week back to school, and the assignments began picking up. I had almost one sewing project due in every class. Things were getting more intense, but I had to stay focused. Every Friday was when Finley and I would let loose and hang out at a bar, have a glass of wine or two, and then he would drop me off at home. This Friday, however, he had one too many drinks, and I invited him to crash at my apartment on the couch. I could hear him in the middle of the night throwing up in the bathroom. At least he wasn't a hot mess like others and would vomit in the taxi ride home. He had class. The next few months, Finn and I skipped our Friday routines because we had too many projects on our plate, and we couldn't risk failing to hand it in, otherwise we might have to redo the whole course. I wasn't about losing my grade point average on partying. It was a Sunday night, and I was preparing a bowl of steamed vegetables and baked salmon steak. I turned on the TV to a random channel which happened to be the news, just for some ambient noise. I made a hot cup of ginger turmeric tea and brought my food to the living room. I put my tea on the table while I ate my dinner. The reporter at the desk announced, "This just in, another body has been found at the side of the road of a woman who appears to be in her late 20s. This is the 7th victim in a month, and police believe there is a serial killer within the city. With the information currently given to the police, they're trying to sketch an image of the possible suspect. They do feel that there is more than one person involved in these killings. More of this is to follow as the investigation continues." My phone started to buzz. I picked it up and saw it was a message from Finn on BlackBerry Messenger asking me if I was watching the news. I told him it was scary what was going on, and something like this was happening so close to our home. And with so many victims so far, the person still hasn't been caught. It made me feel paranoid living in my apartment, as safe as it seemed. I didn't want to mention it to my dad, though. I know he would want me to quit school and go straight back home to New York City. The following Friday was my birthday, and school was closed for a long weekend, which meant Finn and I could go out and celebrate. I put on a sleek black sequins-fitted dress with one sleeve that had fringes dangling. I wore red heels and a Pandora bracelet I'd got for my 16th birthday. I was collecting charms for both Christmas and birthdays to finally get it full enough to wear. I did some finishing touches on my makeup and took a cab to a nightclub called Vie Nocturne, which meant nightlife in English. Finn was waiting in the queue, and he let me cut in front of him. The bouncer let us inside the club without coverage charge because it was my birthday. Finn and I took a couple shots of tequila, and I was already starting to feel tipsy. I told him we needed to slow down, but he said it was my birthday and I should let loose and enjoy myself. He would take care of me. So I drank a little bit more, and then some more, and then at one point I was out on the dance floor. I remember the DJ saying, "Last call," and Finn talking to me in my ear saying that it was getting very late and we should head home. He called a cab for me because he met a guy at the bar and he wanted to head home with him. I wasn't offended at all that Finn wouldn't accompany me to my apartment, but he's a great guy, and after his breakup with his boyfriend, he deserves some romance tonight. Might as well him than me. I was terrible at dating. I guess it's the broken family and drama that I felt it would scare any guy away. The cab pulled up outside the club. I hugged Finn and he told me to text or call him as soon as I reached home. I buckled my seatbelt and the cab driver gave me a grin in the rearview mirror as he began driving. I could feel everything around me spin. I definitely was drunk, and before I could throw up, I asked the driver to let down the windows for ventilation. He listened. I turned my head to the side and closed my eyes. Shortly after, I was interrupted. "Miss, I'll be making a quick stop to pick up another driver. My shift is almost over, and he will continue with your ride." I slowly nodded, but I was feeling very nauseous. The driver stopped the car, and another man got into the passenger side. He had a backpack on and was holding a small camcorder. The driver told the other man that he's going to go 4 blocks and stop at the bar, and then the passenger would have to take the rest of the route to drop me off before accepting another ride. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I began throwing up in the back seat of the car. Both men turned around in disgust and started yelling at each other. My head was spinning out of control. The only bit of conversation that I could make out between the two men was the passenger was telling the driver why he had accepted a drunk person in the car and that it sets them off many hours because they have to stop and clean it, and that no one would be out at that time because of the new 2 a.m. city curfew. "We're delayed now, Charlie," said the passenger to the driver. I interrupted the men by apologizing, but my words came out all slurred. The men decided to first drop me home before continuing with their night. I felt bad for ruining their shift, and I wondered how many clients they could have served before the curfew had I not vomited. I stumbled to the elevator and took it up to my apartment. As soon as I opened the door, I ran to the nearest bathroom and threw up. I hovered over the toilet for several minutes until I felt like I was through with being sick. I flushed the toilet and wiped my face. I held a railing until I got up to the top of the stairs. I grabbed my PJs that I'd worn from the night before and quickly changed the best that I could. I didn't even bother to wash my face from the makeup, crawled into the bed, and knocked out. The next day, I felt the rays of light from the sun hit my face. I slowly opened my eyes, but the shine was so bright, even with the blinds drawn, that it hurt my eyes and gave me a headache. I slowly got up and sat at the edge of my bed. I heard a pounding sound and I thought it was in my head until I realized it was the front door. I groaned as I took the stairs down. Must have been about a solid 3 minutes until I got to the front door. I peered through the peephole. It was Finn. He had a panicked look on his face. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. Finn looked a bit relieved, but was leaning more towards annoyed with me. He didn't even wait to be invited in. He just barged in, asking me why I didn't call him last night to make sure I was home safe. He was worried about me. I told him I was really drunk and not feeling well, and if it bothered him so much, why didn't he call me instead? Finn told me he did call me more than 50 times. If I had checked my phone, I would know. I grabbed a bottle of water and told him if he could get my phone from upstairs. It was on my bed, and I couldn't walk another flight of steps without needing to sit down. Finn rushed up the steps and was back down before I could even sit on the living room couch. He passed me my phone and sat across from me. I opened it to the call history screen, and it was true. Finn had called me, not 50 times, but 51. I told him that was overkill. It wasn't like we were dating or anything. He told me it wasn't time for being sassy or my stupid jokes. Plus, he reminded me that he was gay and he preferred guys, or maybe the over-drinking from last night made me forget. I gave a partial smile, but was also thinking that he was being pretty rude. "Okay, Finn," I said, rolling my eyes. "I get it, you're worked up. What happened? What's the issue?" Finn said, "It's obvious that you haven't seen the news yet. The serial killer who murdered 7 people was in the middle of dumping a body of his 8th victim when he was caught. He does have an accomplice. Police were right about that." I was shocked. Had the killers been caught earlier, there would be one less victim. "There's more," said Finn. "The serial killers were driving a cab for transportation service. One's name was Thomas and the other was Charlie." I didn't say a word because I had the worst hangover possible. So Finn carried on talking. "Rosie, I put you in a cab yesterday that belonged to the same company those killers worked for. I was scared it was you. The body was found 5 a.m. this morning. We had got home roughly before the curfew at 2 a.m. I rubbed the sides of my temples, and that's when last night began flooding back. The name Charlie sounded familiar. It then dawned on me. The two men yelling in the cab. The driver's name was Charlie. It could have not been a coincidence. I was in the car with two serial killers who were planning to murder their next victim. I could have been that person. History could have repeated itself, and I could have been my mother being taken advantage of, but instead of being killed by the robber, she lived. And now I too was spared. I couldn't help but wonder why, though. I told Finn what happened to me last night, and his face looked like he had seen a ghost. Overwhelmed with the information I gave him, Finn began to bawl. I walked to where he was sitting and hugged him. There was a knock at the door. We both looked at each other confused, and I went to answer it. There were two cops outside and a detective. They asked to come inside as they wanted to ask me some questions about an incident from last night. I knew what they were referring to. They sat down and I made them a cup of coffee each. The detective asked me if I knew what happened. I said yes, my friend Finn here told me. I asked how they found my location. The detective said they found vomit in the car and ran a scan. The information led them here and they were happy to see that I'm okay. They asked me if I remembered anything from last night, even though I was intoxicated. I told them about the brief car ride and the conversation between the two cab drivers. I had some key information that the detectives have already examined. The suspect named Thomas was carrying a black backpack and a retro-looking camcorder. One of the officers said that they'd taken two suspects in for questioning and found the real reason behind the killings. Thomas and Charlie used the camcorder to record the gruesome killings of the victims. Investigators are reviewing the footage as we speak. However, Thomas admitted that they wanted the victim to plead for their life in terror, as those actors do in horror movies before killing them. They said it gave them the thrill and a better experience that the killers were undefeatable. Charlie told the detective that his inspiration was Michael Myers from the Halloween cult movies, and Thomas's was Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I began wiping the tears away from my face. The detective consoled me and said he was glad I was able to escape that fate. He said the suspects did mention me during the questioning, that I was going to be the next victim, but because I was so drunk, it wouldn't be as great of a killing because I wouldn't be engaged. I could feel my stomach churn and the vomit working its way up my throat. I ran to the bathroom, and everything that was left inside from last night's throw-up fest was plain bile. My throat burned, and I gagged for a bit until nothing else came out of my mouth. I flushed the toilet and washed my face, which was already smudged with all the makeup from me not choosing to remove it last night. The detective and officers thanked me for my time, and that if they have any follow-up questions, they will call me to set up a time to chat. Then they left. Finn and I sat on the couch in silence for a couple of hours at least. A country where I had dreamt of becoming a successful designer conjured all kinds of fear in me. Should I just call it quits and go home? By the evening time, my hangover was mostly gone, and Finn decided to stick around. He ordered Chinese food. So, as I said, lifting up the kung pao chicken with my chopsticks and then placed it in my mouth. How was your date with the stranger from the club last night? Finn knew I was changing the subject from the messed up day we had, but he went along with it. Pretty good, he smiled. His name's AJ, and he's also in the arts. He's a painter. His pieces go for at least $2,000. Impressive, I said. Are you going to see him again? Duh, said Finn. Not because he's kind of rich, but he's also very cute. We're like the Neil Patrick Harris and David Burtka without the kids. Maybe someday. Okay there, Mr. Wedding Planner. I didn't know you were that in deep with a guy you just met. Hey, laughed Finn. I imagined myself having a rom-com kind of love story, and when that didn't happen for me, I created my own. We both giggled. I was happy for Finn that he found a potential husband on the same night something disastrous could have happened to me. Maybe there was someone watching over me in heaven. Maybe it was my sister. Well, I hope to believe. All I know is that this will be a very difficult conversation to have with my dad, but it has to be done. Anything in life could happen at anywhere at any time, and it might be something out of our control, so we can't be too prepared for any circumstance. I've decided I won't be dropping out of my program after all. I'm not one to give up, but I will for sure stop staying out late at night or walk alone in the streets. Tonight I'm praying for those innocent lives lost at the hands of disturbed men. May those souls rest in peace. Hey Scary Story fans, I hope you enjoyed these short stories written and narrated by me. If you have a scary story that's fiction or non-fiction and would like it to be featured in my next video, send it to the email in the description below. In the meantime, sweet dreams and happy screaming.